Hello, I'm Scott Johnson. I'm director from Still Point Yoga London. I'm here at Purple Valley. I've been invited, gratefully invited, by Purple Valley to come and teach a 2-week workshop with my friend Kia Nadamaya from Mysore Yoga Paris. And what we wanted to do when we were teaching here was try and teach how the practice of Ashtanga yoga can be more contemplative in the principles about how you practice it and how you meet the practice. So I come from a perspective of bringing mindfulness or mindful qualities into the practice. My friend Kia Nadamaya, she brings pranayama, really bringing the pranayama to see how that lands as we practice yoga, asana, and yoga and in life itself. So they've asked me to talk a little bit about how I see practice and mindfulness working together. And so that's why I'm here. I've got this lovely board which I presented to them earlier, and here we are. I'm now going to talk to you about that. I see Ashtanga yoga as a contemplative practice, period. If anything less than that, for me, means we're missing an opportunity to go deep into looking and understanding ourselves. The practice has incredible physical benefits, obviously, but predominantly, if we're not using it in a way that really helps us to see patterns and see us and understand ourselves, then I think we're missing a trick. So I started practicing bringing mindfulness. I've been meditating for years, but I was bringing mindfulness qualities into my practice when I trained around 5 years ago. And so when I brought those mindfulness qualities into my practice, it changed completely. The practice became lighter. I felt stronger, and it wasn't like I was doing anything different. It was like I was just noticing differently and putting my awareness differently. And so I'm going to explain to you kind of what I explained to the students this week in Purple Valley. And I'm going to explain it to you now from this graph. So what we have this is a simplistic form, a simple way of looking at it. But what we have is the practice of yoga can be based on yoga, chitta, vritti, nirodha. Yoga is the cessations or the stopping of the fluctuations of the mind. Okay, that's the second sutra of Patanjali's Yoga Sutra. And so when we look at that, we could say that's how yoga evolves. That's what yoga is. It's this stanza is the one that we're all trying to perhaps work towards. Now what we're really interested in, all the words in the Yoga Sutras are amazing, fascinating. We want to unpack them, and that's why they're there. But the really interesting one we want to draw on is this one, Nirodha. Nirodha is stilling or stopping, or like an extension of one of those words. And so the stilling of the chitta, the mind, the fluctuations of the mind, is kind of what the practice is trying to help us do. The practice of yoga is trying to help us to do. The stilling of these two things. Okay? So stilling or stopping is allowing us to pause, or allowing us to create a moment where we can see the vritti, the chitta vrittis, the mind turning. So if we take it back a step, we could say, before we're trying to still the thoughts, we have to know what the chitta vritti are, what the vrittis are, the turnings. So we want to see, this is really interesting, the stories that go around our head. We want to know them. We want to see how they move through the mind, so perhaps we can understand and begin to know how to stop them. This is where Nirodha comes in. So how do we bring this into practice? Okay, how do we bring Nirodha, or the idea of Nirodha into practice? We bring Nirodha into practice by understanding that we have physical form and we have mental form. Okay, so we bring it down into the body. The body is prana. For me, the practice of physical yoga or the yoga that we do is based on these two principles, which are prana and chitta. Prana being the life force, that which I am, it's what my physicality is. Chitta meaning the mind, my imagination, my perceptions. And our practice of yoga, for me, is based on playing and working with these two principles, the principle of energy and the principle of perception. And when we're practicing, it could be our Ashtanga practice or asana, we're using the mind to focus or work with the prana. And these two things work in tandem together. Now, when we are to get to this point of stilling, is to get to these, understand that when I'm thinking about the prana, when my mind's turning and I focus on the prana, these two things are connected. And by these two things being connected, if I'm aware of that, it stills my mind, which means mindfulness happens. And mindfulness happens when I'm aware that my mind and my body on the prana are connected. And this is why, for example, in Ashtanga Vinyasa Yoga, we have the counted method. The method when I breathe in, I focus on the breath, I count it, I use my mind to count the breath, and then I move the body as a response to the breath. So I have my mind doing the number, I think of a number, I move my body. By doing those things, I become mindful, I become aware of the process of that thing. So what I'm doing is I'm putting my mind in place and moving and being aware of the movement, like I'm going. And I'm completely aware of that movement. If I'm aware of that movement, I'm being mindful of it. Okay? So the actual, if we go back to the Ashtanga yoga practice, if we really focus on every vinyasa, if we count the breath, if we don't count the breath, but we still focus on the correct method, and we really know and we're really present to every breath, as we're moving, we're being mindful. That's how mindfulness starts to really drop into the practice. But what is mindfulness? What is being mindful of this and this? Mindfulness can be broken down into these four foundations. When I'm focusing my attention with awareness through this human being, I'm focusing in four ways. I'm focusing on my body, feelings, my mind, and phenomena. The body, when I'm being mindful of the body, I'm being aware of the breath. I'm being aware of how the body and the breath, how the breath is in the body, and also the senses. The vehicle of senses like touch, taste, smell, sound, and smell. And being aware that all of those things are happening in my body. Okay, they're just happening. My breath, I'm breathing all the time and I'm sensing. Okay, and I'm in relationship with that. Okay, what I'm doing then with the feelings, okay, so it moves the feelings. With the feelings, I'm aware that I'm in relationship with my body through the citta. Okay, so I'm aware that sensations happen in my body through the senses, and they're like creating a feedback. So I can get a pain, and I can go, there's a pain in my body, and I can sense that pain in my body. What happens with the feelings is my feelings, or it will turn it into something I want to be there, or something I don't. So it's like if a sensation comes up, it's either something I go, ooh, that's good, or ooh, that's bad. So we're understanding that everything is arising in our body, and I'm able to feel it. And as I'm feeling it, I'm clarifying it as something. Okay, so I'm saying this is good, or this is bad, or this is indifferent. I'm indifferent to it. When we look at the third foundation, which is the mind, this is purely around how the thought process works. So my the way I think, the type of thoughts I have, imagination, the way I'm perceiving anything that's outside of me or inside of me, and is the turnings of the mind, is how is always going on. These are things that are always turning. So the mind is about how I'm computing, for want of a better expression, the world. And phenomena is kind of like all of these things together. It's the whole field of awareness. To see that, like all of these things, that there is there's these things rising and falling all the time in my awareness. I'm never not having an experience. And it could be experience of my breath. It could be experience of any of my senses in the body. It can be how the feelings how those feelings are coming down in relationship to those senses, and how they're computing, and how they're coming up. And it could be an emotion. It could be how then I'm going off on incredible adventures and stories in my mind, and how that I get caught up in all these stories, and how I get taken off. This is trying to understand that, or being aware that all of this is always happening at every single moment. Nothing is ever not happening, and you are never not experiencing through the body feelings, sensations, emotions, thoughts, sound, all these kind of things. They're always playing up. So the idea of phenomena is the idea that you're taking a step wider back to try and experience the field of awareness. The field of awareness, which is everything that's coming through. This is how we perceive the world. This is how we kind of like, and this being able to cultivate this awareness between here and here, to understand that this field is trying to understand that this is the base of that field. That all the time I'm again and again coming back to the idea of focusing on the experience of things as they happen, as they're arising. And then when we have this, like with this idea that this is what's going on, this is how we're working, this is how we're understanding ourselves in a yoga practice, and not even just a yoga practice, but like we'll talk about that in a bit, but how this is like the field of awareness. Then on top of that, when we actually understand that that's how this is playing out, we can start to look and see and be with the things as they arise. And how do we do that? And it's about cultivating qualities of attention and attitudes that help us to be with these things, these experiences as they rise and as they fall away. Because these are all built on, we could go back, these are all, particularly here, these stories are built on, the psychology of how I've got to this place, my whole life, and how it's played out for me comes to then how I understand the way that body feelings and phenomena is arising. It's so much based on history, historical, how your life's got up to this point. So what we want to do, what we're trying to do in mindfulness and to a certain degree contemplative traditions, is seeing if we can lay on top attitudes or quality or nurture qualities of seeing things, ways of seeing things that help us to connect with ourselves. And these attitudes in mindfulness are non-judgment, patience, beginner's mind, trust, non-striving, acceptance, and letting go. These 7 qualities are really helping us if you look at each of them like individually yourselves and see which one really resonates with you and which one's really hard. Because there is one that you go, oh, I'm not sure about that. But that would be the one that we really want to try and cultivate. So non-judgment would be, as things arise in me, can I be with them? Can I not colour them with an opinion? Can I allow things just to be as they are, and me witness them and be with them as they arise and as they fall away? As stuff's coming in, all the time we can have this mind here allows us to make things up, to make stories up about things. And then we create a judgment on the thing that we created. What we're trying to see is, can we step away from that? And when something comes up or in our body, can we just be with it? Whereas before, say something would have gone like this, can we just allow it to be and not judge it? And what happens when we're with it? What's here? What's here? Patience. We have a lifetime to nurture ourselves, to nurture our awareness. It never ends. And so it's being aware that again and again we're returning to this place here, this idea of this point between mind and body, and again seeing that it just carries on, that there's nowhere we're trying to get to. And if there's nowhere we're trying to get to, we can just take our time. There's no rush. It's almost like we're slowing everything down and allowing things just to be as they are. And that does take patience. Slowing down takes patience. So this quality of attention is really, for me, it's like, this was one of the ones for me that was quite tough. But there's a slowing down that's created, and this includes this happens in the Ashtanga practice too. If we slow our practice down, ironically, more practice opens up. Which actually, that's what happened to me. I think that's kind of when I had when I brought the mindfulness practice into my Ashtanga practice. This was the one. I slowed it right down. I wasn't trying to get anywhere anymore. And it flourished. Beginner's mind. Every breath is fresh. Every experience is fresh. Every moment is fresh. Every time we step on the yoga mat in the morning, it's a new practice. So we're bringing this quality, if we can, that we know nothing and we're looking to consistently discover. We almost have to learn practice to be able to let go of practice to continue learning. So if we kind of get this quality of, how can I always feel like I'm beginning again? How can every new breath be fresh? How can I not think I know it all, and just continue to be in this idea of learning? And there's another word I'm going to add here called curiosity. All of this, when you see something for the first time and it captures you, you become curious. You go, oh, look at that. And it kind of wakes you up a little bit. That's kind of connected together. This curiosity is the key to all of this, is continuing to be curious around the whole way that life is playing out. So this for me is like a really powerful way of attitude or way of seeing, because it also allows us again and again to stay humble, to stay like grounded, to not go like off, and actually just continue to be a student, to continue to learn. Trust. Trust is like, trust is so multi-layered. Trust is like, trust in this practice itself. Trust in the way that this is all okay. This is how it's playing out. Trust in the fact that I'm able to be okay. Learn to just be okay with things as they are. And importantly, it's like a mindfulness practice and a yoga practice is a beautiful way, when taught compassionately and kindly, a way of us helping to cultivate trust in ourselves. Whether you're practicing on your own at home or you're practicing with a teacher, you want to be developing this ability to trust in yourself through the fact that a yoga practice and a contemplative practice is helping you to see the cycles, the wheels of yourself, and building up these like ways of seeing. So this trust is developed as a response to waking up to these things, and we don't, and that's one of the things we have trouble with as well, is kind of is our own. We all lot have a self-doubt, and really connecting with your breath, really getting into a sense of feeling, and connecting with that feeling in a way that's truthful, develops your own sense of trust and self-worth. Not striving for anything. This is the big one in Ashtanga, because we have a series after series, and there's postures, and there's like trying to get, trying, going for it. And almost like what we want to do is let go of the ability to have to get anywhere. The more we become present, the more we become contemplative to just notice this experience here, the more the practice just does its work. If we're practicing Ashtanga yoga, maybe some of you practice once or twice a week, that's okay. Predominantly we're practicing, if we can, as much as we can. So the practice itself, when we're looking at Ashtanga yoga, the evolution of practice is what's continuing. It's the fullness of the practice. The individual postures are just part of the big play. The ongoing nature of practice itself, of coming again, back and again to the breath, again and again and again, beginning again, helps us to let go of having to do anything a certain way or be anything a certain way. It's nice to try things, but if we're striving for something, it's like we want it, like this. And it's good to go for things, but hold them lightly. It's like the more we hold them lightly, the more these things can just happen. So it's the allowing things just to be present, not going. And actually the more that you kind of become present, the more you just focus, aware of these things. Okay? Acceptance. These kind of quite linked. Accepting where we are. Again and again. That everything as it is right now is as it should be. That especially in yoga practice, when we can call us, I know many students who say, today was a really bad practice, it's awful. And I say, good. You practiced. Try and don't accept it as good and bad, and just accept that the practice is, or you are where you are. And again, you're landing again and again in this field, and allowing things to be. When we allow things to be, there's an acceptance in them. And quite often with the vrittis, the stories that we created up in our minds, they can colour things. So if we start to have this attitude of acceptance, and allow that the acceptance can allow us to see stories as stories. That actually accepting where we are right now allows stories to just not really have or lose their value or lose their strength. So this is the really big one. And then letting go of it all, letting go into it all, is just really the epitome of contemplative nature, or contemplative practice. Is the way that when you breathe in, when you breathe out, you're letting everything go. You're breathing when you're in a posture and you breathe out. You're letting go into the posture. So we're just allowing things to be and then falling into them. Allowing all the sensations to be and falling into them to see what they're there. Allowing the stories to be there, to allow them just to be without trying to change them, without getting too caught up in them, and then letting it go. So these kind of principles, if we can, are really valuable in allowing, in generating the way to see the nature of things. These are the nature of things. These are perhaps the way of seeing things. And the predominant attitude that covers all of these 7 principles is kindness and compassion. What we're really wanting to do is to see that when we look at ourselves, we'd want to do it in such a gentle way that, like we were looking at the one we love dearest, because that's basically us. Can we bring this quality of awareness, this compassionate, kind awareness, to the way that these attitudes, the way that we're seeing these things, that allows us to cultivate a quality, an ultimate quality of kindness and compassion. And this is completely possible in life and in an Ashtanga practice. Like, I've seen so many people beat themselves up over this practice, and I've seen people wake up because of this practice. Practice doesn't change. It's the quality of attention we bring to it. So the predominant idea of as a gentle awareness of like seeing that we're just gently moving and watching things as they move around, as our awareness shifts between things, and that there's a kindness and compassionate overall quality that embodies the experience, the attitudes that we're trying to create. And then if we take all of that whole idea and that whole principle allows us to then really begin to understand how karma, or how karma's working, which is the kind of the falling away of life into a moment and the creating of life in the moment. How by me being aware of the phenomena of all these things arising and falling away, I can be aware of how my life is evolving because I'm mindful to it. I can see that a pain comes up in my body, and immediately I create a story around it. Can that pain come up in my body, and immediately I go, what's here? Rather than association, I'm starting to see that I can see the stories that I'm creating, and I can learn from them. I can let them go, and I can allow life to just be. I can respond to the things that are arising as they arise. And if I've got this kind of sense of kindness and compassion over all of this, that as I see things as they arise, I just see things as they arise in a kind and compassionate way. And then if I'm continuing to look in that way and move in that way, my life unfolds in a way of being able to start to understand the nature of the way I've been seeing things, and then be able to move forward in life with more sense of a quality of awareness of who I am underneath stories, underneath patterns, underneath pain, underneath cycles of the way that things are playing out for us. Yeah. So that's pretty much it. That's pretty much it. It's kind of, I could go on we could have another one of these, but this pretty much for me embodies the way that we go from this idea of Patanjali through into what we're actually working with. This is the principle. This is what makes us us. And then this is how we can bring an awareness and quality to this. So this lays over to the top of this, and that's then how we can move forward in the world with awareness. I hope that helps.